Try again.
Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome to Storytime with Julian. Tonight is Tuesday, March the 9th, and we are in episode 85 of this show. This is episode 85. I've finally been able to get all the tallies up and see what the count is. And in this 85th episode, we are revisiting a book that we've looked at a couple of times before. You can see it right there on the screen. The title of the book is Gorilla My Love, and it is by one of our favorite authors here at Storytime, Toni Cade Bambara. We visited this book a couple of times before, and we've read the stories, the title story, Gorilla My Love. We've also read Man Bovanne, which is a wonderful story about a mother of a certain age who's still got a lot of life in her, and her kids who are just not ready to see their mother that way. And then, of course, we've read Blues Ain't No Mockin Bird, which is a wonderful story about an elderly couple and some gentrifiers who come by the neighborhood or come by their neck of the woods looking to diagram, no, or to to sort of keep a video record of the quaint little lifestyle of the Negro folk, and you can imagine how well that goes over. But what we found with Toni Cade Bambara throughout all of her stories is that we have these incredibly rich characters, this very soulful rural styling that we get, a lot of wonderful dialect. So if you're a fan of Zora Neale Hurston, if you're a fan of Alice Walker, if you're a fan of Crystal Wilkinson, and you haven't yet heard anything from Toni Cade Bambara, you should like these stories. I think you will enjoy this read. Before we get into the read, I want to do a little bit of the housekeeping. First things first. If you're watching this on Facebook, that's wonderful. I want you to watch it wherever you are comfortable. Let me be clear about that. However, we are incentivizing moving over to YouTube. YouTube is going to be the bigger growth area for us. We will be hitting our anniversary episode real soon. And after this first year, we're going to make some changes in the nature of the program. We've been kind of keeping it the same way, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy this time with you. But we're going to be doing things differently in the very near future. YouTube is where you're going to want to be. So let me make this clear. Today's Tuesday. This Saturday, I've got to buy some books. I got to get some new stuff on our shelves. I'm going to buy probably 5 books. That's the plan. Whatever books I buy, I'm going to buy an additional copy. That additional copy is going to go into what I'm calling the Storytime with Julian grab bag. Now, right now, we only have, what do we have? We've got about just under 200 subscribers, which is nice, but I need more. I'm going to be straight up with y'all. I need more subscribers on YouTube. I want to hit 1,000 before my birthday, ideally. Now, that's ambitious because my birthday is May 31st, but I'd like to hit 1,000 before then. I am going to push for 1,000. And what I'm going to do is once we hit 1,000, we are going to have a drawing for the Storytime with Julian book grab bag. I'm not going to tell y'all everything that's in it. I might pick up books that I don't tell y'all about, but I'm going to make a Storytime with Julian grab bag. And when we hit 1,000, I'm going to give away that grab bag to one lucky commenter who has subscribed to the channel, who has liked the videos and has commented on the videos. So that might be something you want to do. Now, I don't know. I don't necessarily know what incentivizes y'all, but y'all seem to like books because you're here. So that's what we're going to do. And once I hit 1,000, I'm going to put a bunch of names in a sorting program. It's not going to be a hat. I have people who are beasts at Excel and make all sorts of macros and programs. They're going to help me handle that. We're going to put it in a sorting program and then the name is going to be spit out, and whoever that is, you will win that collection of books and they will be sent to you. All right. So anyway, and it's not just going to be those 4. It's going to be however many I purchase within that time that it takes to get to 1,000. But that don't mean drag your feet. Let's get to 1,000 quicker so that I can build another contest, a better contest for when we get to 5,000, because there's no reason that we can't. There really isn't. There's no reason that we can't. It's just a matter of spreading the word and spreading the love. And if you love this, I'm asking you to do that. I'm asking you to spread the word, spread the love, let people know about Storytime with Julian. Post this right now. Go ahead and throw that up on your timeline. Let people see it. Put a link to it from time to time. Don't just wait for when it's the actual show time. Let people know, like, hey, by the way, if you're not doing anything Tuesday or Thursday, this is some good stuff to have in the background while you got the dishwasher running and after you tuck the kids in, whatever it is. Y'all know how to talk about this. But anyway, that's housekeeping tidbit number 1. Housekeeping tidbit number 2, and super important, is this thing right here. This is our first annual spring book drive, Storytime with Julian, in partnership with Harriet's Bookshop. Now, first, let me give y'all an update. We have raised to date $1,350 toward our $2,000 goal, which is really pretty impressive. Considering the fact that there were a couple of weeks that we weren't on. Now, we raised a lot of that, to be perfectly honest, in the first 3 days, which means that things have trailed off a little bit. I want to be absolutely clear. Every single dollar matters. Every single dollar matters. And every single dollar is important. Every contribution is very much valued. So please, if you can spare even $1, I want you to use your mobile device. I want you to go to Cash App, if you've got Cash App, and use hashtag Harriet's Bookshop and send them $1, send them $5, send them $10, send what you can. Or if you use Venmo, you can use @Harriet's Bookshop. Same deal. Just make sure that when you send that contribution to the drive, you use the hashtag STWJ Spring. That's Storytime with Julian Spring. That way they know it's not just random money. Because I mean, hey, also send random money to Black bookstores if you can. Why not? But that way they know that this particular money is not random. It is for the Storytime with Julian book drive. Now, we are sending out books already. We have over 140 kids. I think we are at 145, and we had to stop the list. So you can't register your kid right now until we get more donations, because we need the donations to cover the books that are being shipped out. So, but we are still already shipping them out. And what we aren't able to get, we're going to make up the difference one way or another. But let's take some of the burden off of our partner, and let's pick this up. This is 150 books to 150 Black kids. We can do this. Legit, we can do this. There are 14 people on here right now. Like, legit, we could do this easily. $10 donation from everybody right now would make $150. That's half a book. That's half a book. If we did that the following day, boom, we'd be done. But anyway, I just want to make sure that you all are aware the book drive is still going on. We're still very much excited about it. Harriet has been a wonderful, wonderful partner in this, and we're excited to do more of this kind of thing. So show us that we can do it. You know, show our partners what Storytime with Julian's audience is capable of. Let us know that you care about these kinds of things, and we can do more of these kinds of efforts in the future. All right. All right. Cool. So that's the housekeeping for today. Now, on to tonight's book, Toni Cade Bambara's Gorilla My Love. I don't think I've ever read for you all the preface, which Ms. Bambara calls a sort of preface. That's legit what it's titled. So just to give all of us a little flavor for what we're about to get into before we start tonight's stories, I'm going to read the preface for you now. Make sure, just again, want to make sure that you've tagged your friends, let your friends know what's going on, bring some folk in here, and let them know. And hold up, before I get into this preface, yes, Bernita, Miss Bradley, yes, indeed, I got the book. Matter of fact, we made a post about it. I got your book, and I got two lovely books from author friend Pat Mellenhoff as well, and we are really excited. We're going to dig into that real soon. Thank you so much for sending that, and again, thank you for being a part of the book drive. For those of you all who weren't here a couple of weeks ago during the pre-read, Benita Bradley is the head of Engage Detroit, and they are one of the partners in our book drive. So the kids that are in her program are receiving some of the books that we are shipping out. So we're really excited about that. And again, thank you so much. So on to the preface, a sort of preface out of Gorilla My Love by Toni Cade Bambara. It does no good to write autobiographical fiction, because the minute the book hits the stand, here comes your mama screaming, "How could you?" and sighing, "Death, where is that sting?" And she snatches you up out your bed to grill you about what was going on back there in Brooklyn when she was working 3 jobs and trying to improve the quality of life, and come to find out on page 42 that you were messing around with that nasty boy up the block, and breaks into sobs, and quite naturally your family strolls in all sleepy-eyed to catch the floor show at 5 a.m. But as far as your mama's concerned, it's 1940 and something, and you ain't too grown to have your ass whipped. And that was all one sentence. And it's no use using bits and snatches of even real events and real people, even if you do cover guys switch around and change up, because the next thing you know, your best friend's laundry cart is squeaking past, but your bell ain't ringing, and you trot down the block after her, and there's this drafty cold pressure front from the weatherman surely didn't predict, and your friend says in this chilly way that it's really something when your own friend stabs you in the back with a pin. And for the next 2 blocks, you try to explain that the character is not her at all, but it just happens to be speaking one of her lines, and right about the time you hit the laundromat and you're ready to just about give up and take the weight, she turns to you and says that seeing as how you've plundered her soul and walked off with a piece of her flesh, the least you can do is spin off half the royalties her way. So I deal in straight up fiction myself, because I value my family and friends, and mostly because I lie a lot anyway. And thus endeth a sort of preface. I could not be more tickled. I picked the right book for today. I picked the right chuckles for today. I'm all right with this. I'm all right with this choice. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? The first story for tonight is The Hammerman. Not that Hammerman, not the cartoon from Stanley Burrell. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't read the story yet. Maybe it is. What do I know? Let's find out together, shall we? I was glad to hear that Manny had fallen off the roof. I had put out the tale that I was down with yellow fever, but nobody paid me no mind, least of all Dirty Red, who stomped right in to announce that Manny had fallen off the roof and that I could come out of hiding now. My mother dropped what she was doing, which was the laundry, and got the whole story out of Red. Bad enough you got to hang around with boys, she said, but fight with 'em too. And you would pick the craziest one at that. Manny was supposed to be crazy. That was his story. To say you were bad put some people off, but to say you were crazy, well, you were officially not to be messed with. So that was his story. On the other hand, after I called him what I called him and said a few choice things about his mother, his face did go through some piercing changes, and I did kind of wonder if maybe he was sure nuts. I didn't wait to find out. I got in the wind. And then he waited for me on my stoop all day and all night, not hardly speaking to the people going in and out. And he was there all day Saturday with his sister bringing him peanut butter sandwiches and cream sodas. He must have gone to the bathroom right there because every time I looked out the kitchen window, there he was. And Sunday, too. I got to thinking the boy was mad. You got no sense of humor. That's your trouble, I told him. He looked up, but he didn't say nothing. All at once, I was real sorry about the whole thing. I should have settled for hitting off in the little girl's schoolyard or waiting for Frankie to come in so we could raise some kind of hell. This way, I had to play sick when my mother was around because my father had already taken away my BB gun and hid it. I don't know how they got Manny on the roof finally. Maybe the Wakefield kids, the ones who keep the pigeons, called him up. Manny was a sucker for sick animals and things like that. Or maybe Frankie got some nasty girls to go up on the roof with him and got Manny to join them. I don't know. Anyway, the catwalk had lost all its cement and the roof always did kind of slant downward, so Manny fell off the roof. I got over my yellow fever right quick, needless to say, and ventured outside. But by this time, I had already told Miss Rose that Crazy Manny was after me. And Miss Rose, being who she was, quite naturally went over to Manny's house and said a few harsh words to his mother, who, being who she was, chased Miss Rose out into the street, and they commenced to get with it, snatching bottles out of the garbage cans and breaking them on the Johnny pumps and stuff like that. Dirty Red didn't have to tell us about this. Everybody could see and hear all. I never figured the garbage cans for an arsenal, but Miss Rose came up with sticks and table legs and things, and Manny's mother had her share of scissor blades and bicycle chains. They got to rolling in the streets, and all you could see was pink draws and fat legs. It was something else. Miss Rose is nutty, but Manny's mother is crazier than Manny. They were at it a couple of times during my sick spell. Everyone would congregate on the windowsill or the fire escape, commenting that it was still too much cold for this kind of nonsense, but they watched anyway. And then Manny fell off the roof. And that was that. Miss Rose went back to her dream books, and Manny's mother went back to her tumbled down kitchen of dirty clothes bundles and bundles of rags and children. My father got in on it too, because he happened to ask Manny one night why he was sitting on the stoop like that every night. Manny told him right off that he was going to kill me first chance he got. Quite naturally, this made my father a little warm, me being his only daughter and planning to become a doctor and take care of him in his old age. So he had a few words with Manny first, but then he got hold of the older brother, Bernard, who was more his size. Bernard didn't see how any of it was his business or my father's business, so my father got mad and jammed Bernard's head into the mailbox. Then my father started getting messages from Bernard's uncle about where to meet him for a showdown and all. My father didn't say a word to my mother all this time, just sat around mumbling and picking up the phone and putting it down, or grabbing my stickball bat and putting it back. He carried on like this for days till I thought I would scream if the yellow fever didn't have me so weak. And then Manny fell off the roof, and my father went back to his beer drinking buddies. I was in the schoolyard pitching pennies with the little boys from the elementary school when my friend Violet hits my brand new Spalding over the wall. She came running back to tell me that Manny was coming down the block. I peeked beyond the fence, and there he was, all right. He had his head all wound up like a mummy, and his arm in a sling and his leg in a cast. It looked phony to me, especially that walking cane. I figured Dirty Red had told me a tale just to get me out there so Manny could stomp me, and Manny was playing it up with the costume and all till he could get me. What happened to him? Violet's sisters whispered, but I was too busy trying to figure out how this act was supposed to work. Then Manny passed real close to the fence and gave me a look. You had enough, hammerhead? I yelled. Just bring your crummy self in this yard and I'll pick up where I left off. Violet was knocked out and the other kids went into a huddle. I didn't have to say anything else. And when they all pressed me later, I just said, You know that hammer he always carries in his fatigues? And they all nod and wait for the rest of a long story. Well, I took it away from him, and I walked off nonchalantly. Manny stayed indoors for a long time. I almost forgot about him. New kids moved into the block, and I got all caught up with that. And then Miss Rose finally hit the numbers and started ordering a whole lot of stuff through the mail. And we would sit on the curb and watch these weird looking packages being carried in, trying to figure out what simple minded things she had thrown her money away on when she just might as well wait for the warm weather and throw a block party for all her godchildren. After a while, a center opened up, and my mother said she'd increase my allowance if I went and joined because I'd have to get out of my pants and stay in skirts on account of that's the way things were at the center. So I joined and got to thinking about everything else but old Hammerhead. It was a rough place to get along in, the center, but my mother said that I needed to be with. Hmm. But my mother said that I needed to be bead with. Okay. But my mother said that I needed to be bead with and she needed not to be with me, so I went. And that time I sneaked into the office, that's when I got really turned on. I looked into one of those not quite white folders and saw that I was from a deviant family in a deviant neighborhood. I showed my mother the word in the dictionary, but she didn't pay me no mind. It was my favorite word after that. I ran it into the ground till one day my father got the strap just to show me how deviant he could get. So I gave up trying to improve my vocabulary, and I almost gave up my dungarees. Then one night I'm walking past the Douglas Street Park because I got thrown out of the center for playing pool when I should have been sewing, even though I had already decided this was going to be my last fling with boy things. And starting tomorrow, I was going to fix my hair right and wear skirts all the time just so my mother would stop talking about her gray hairs and Miss Rose would stop calling me by my brother's name by mistake. So I'm walking past the park and there's old Manny on the basketball court, perfecting his layups and talking with himself. Being me, I quite naturally walk right up and ask what the hell he's playing in the dark. And he looks up and all around like the dark had crept up on him when he wasn't looking. So I knew right away that he'd been out there for a long time, with his eyes just going along with the program. There was 2 seconds to go and we were 1 point behind, he said, shaking his head and staring at his sneakers like they was somebody. And I was in the clear. I'd left the men in the backcourt because I was there, smiling, you dig? Because I was in the bag. They passed the ball and I slid the ball up nice and easy because there was nothing to worry about. And he shook his head. I muffed the goddamn shot. Ball bounced off the rim. He stared at his hands. The game of the season. Last game. And then he ignored me altogether. Though he wasn't talking to me in the first place. He went back to the layups, always from the same spot with his arms crooked in the same way, over and over. I must have gotten hypnotized because I probably stood there for at least an hour like a fool till I couldn't even see the damn ball, much less the basket. But I stood there anyway for no reason I know of. He never missed. But he cursed himself anyway. It was torture. And then a squad car pulled up and a short cop with hair like one of the Marx brothers came out, hitching up his pants. He looked real hard at me and then at Manny. What are you two doing? He's doing a layup. I'm watching, I said with my smart self. Then the cop just stood there and finally turned to the other one who was just getting out of the car. Who unlocked the gate? The big one said. It's always unlocked, I said. Then we three just stood there like a bunch of penguins watching Manny go at it. This on the level? The big guy asked, tilting his hat back with his thumb the way big guys do in hot weather. Hey, you, he said, walking over to Manny. I'm talking to you. He finally grabbed the ball to get Manny's attention, but that didn't work. Manny just stood there with his arms out waiting for the pass so he could save the game. He wasn't paying no mind to the cop. So quite naturally, when the cop slapped him upside his head, it was a surprise. And when the cop started counting 3 to go, Manny had already recovered from the slap and was just ticking off the seconds before the buzzer sounded and all was lost. Give me the ball, man. Manny's face was all tightened up and ready to pop. Did you hear what I said, black boy? Now, when somebody says that word like that, I gets warm. And crazy or no crazy, Manny was my brother at that moment and the cop was the enemy. You better give him back his ball, I said. Manny don't take no mess from no cops. He ain't bothering nobody. He's just going to be Mr. Basketball when he grows up, just trying to get a little practice in before the softball season starts. Look here, sister. We'll run you in too, Harpo said. I damn sure can't be your sister seeing how I'm a black girl. Boy, I sure will be glad when you run me in so I can tell everybody about that. You must think you're in the South, mister. The big guy screwed his mouth up and let one of them hard day sighs. The park's closed, little girl, so why don't you and your boyfriend go on home? That really got me. That little girl was bad enough, but that boyfriend was too much. But I kept cool, mostly because Manny looked so pitiful waiting there with his hands in a timeout and there being no one to stop the clock. But I kept my cool mostly because of the hammer in Manny's pocket and no telling how frantic things can get with a big mouth like me and a couple of wise cops and a crazy boy too. The gates are open, I said real quiet like, and this here is a free country. So why don't you give him back his ball? The big cop did another one of those sighs, his specialty, I guess, and he bounced the ball to Manny, who went right into his gliding thing clear up to the backboard, damn near like he was some kind of beautiful bird. And then he swooshed that ball in. Even if there was no net and you couldn't really hear the swoosh, something happened to the bones in my chest. It was something. Crazy kids anyhow, the one with the wig said and turned to go. But the big guy watched Manny for a while, and I guess something must have snapped in his head, because all of a sudden, he was hot for Manny taking for because all of a sudden he was hot for taking Manny to jail. I can't ignore that. I am really sorry, y'all. Please hold just one moment. And we're back. I'm sorry. Let's try this again. Crazy kids anyhow, the one with the wig said and turned to go. But the big guy watched Manny for a while, and I guess something must have snapped in his head, because all of a sudden he was hot for taking Manny to jail or court or somewhere and started yelling at him and everything, which is a bad thing to do to Manny, I can tell you. And I'm standing there thinking that none of my teachers from kindergarten right on up, none of them knew that they were talking about. I'll be damned if I ever knew one of them rosy cheeked cops that smiled and helped you get to school without neither you or your raggedy little dog getting hit by without neither you or your raggedy little dog getting hit by a truck. Had that smile on his face too. Not that I ever believed it. I knew Dick and Jane was full of crap from the get-go, especially them cops. Like this dude, for example, pulling on Manny's clothes like that when obviously he had just done about the most beautiful thing a man can do and not be, we're not going to say that word. No cop could swoosh without a net. Look out, man, was all Manny said. But it was the way he pushed the cop that started the real yelling and threats. And I thought to myself, oh God, here I am trying to change my ways and not talk back in school and do like my mother wants, but I just have to have this last fling and now this. Getting shot in the stomach and bleeding to death in Douglas Street Park and poor Manny getting pistol whipped by those bastards and whatnot. I could see it all, practically crying too. And it just wasn't no kind of thing to happen to a small child like me with my confirmation picture in the paper next to my weeping parents and schoolmates. I could feel the blood sticking in my shirt and my eyeball slipping away. And then that confirmation picture again, and my mother and her gray hair and Miss Rose heading for the precinct with a shotgun, and my father getting old and feeble with no one to doctor him up and all. And I wish Manny had fallen off the damn roof and died right then and there and saved me the aggravation of being killed with him by these cops who surely didn't come out of no fifth grade reader. But it didn't happen. They just took the ball out of the park into the dark. They just took the ball and Manny followed them real quiet like, out of the park and into the dark, then into the squad car with his head drooping and his arms in a crook. And I went on home because what the hell am I going to do on a basketball court and it getting to be nearly midnight? I didn't see Manny no more after he got into that squad car. But they didn't kill him after all because Miss Rose heard he was in some kind of big house for people who lose their marbles. And then it was spring finally, and me and Violet was in this very boss fashion show at the center. And Miss Rose bought me my first corsage, yellow roses, to match my shoes. And thus endeth the story. Wow. So we just listened to The Hammerman by Toni Cade Bambara, and it definitely took a turn. Um, it definitely took a turn. There was a lot of comic relief sort of at the beginning, but life be life, and don't it? Story took us on some very real turns. It's wild when you realize this story was first published in the late 60s. Um, and it sounds very much like a child talking about things today. That happens a lot when we read a lot of these readers from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. The relationship between black folk and police, it ain't never changed. We hear some of the same notes. We hear some of the same refrains over and over and over again. And even in this beautiful story with all of this joy and humor and another sassy pants protagonist as Miss Bambara is wont to give us, we still have to confront that reality. Some things gonna have to change, y'all. I love these stories, but we can't be still writing these same stories in another 30 years. I don't want our children now to read the stories that we're writing now and think, dag, it was the same back then, huh? We got to write some different stories. We got to write a different history. But let me go back and read some of these comments. Thank y'all so much for being here and listen. My apologies for that pause, but I just couldn't. I couldn't with all that noise. Let's see. Akanke said, this is absolutely one of my faves. That's good to hear. And hi, welcome. I'm glad to see you watching us over there on YouTube. Latricia picked out one of the lines that I really like. They commenced to get with it. Pink draws and fat legs. Listen, Toni Cade Bambara can paint you a picture, right? And one of the things that I love that she does is when she makes those long, stretched out, paragraph long sentences, those are both a torture and a pleasure to read, because on one hand, I'm like, I need to know when I can take a breath. And on the other hand, I'm like, I love the artistic license that she takes in crafting her sentences that way. That's a real pleasure. But yeah, they commence to get with it. Pink draws and fat legs, definitely one of the lines that I love. I think Joker here was talking here about the fight. Whoop, because yeah, that was definitely an and I whoop kind of moment right there. The pigs, man. Yeah, like for real, what can we say? I think we're all kind of in the same place on that. It broke my heart too. It broke my heart that he got in the car with him. All that man wanted to do was just shoot the ball. That's it. Just wanted to shoot the ball. Dalitha Kelly, welcome. I don't know if we've seen you before. If we have, welcome back. If we haven't, welcome for the first time. Judy Lee says, write us a different world. Well, I think we're all working on that. And Erica loves, let's see, Erica says that she is holding her breath toward the ending, and she was loving the fact that them families were down with the get down. Listen, there was a time. You fight one of us, you fighting all of us. Anybody got the same last name or lived in the same house for long enough, you got to fight all of them. All of them, all of them, all of them. Yo, that was a real pleasure. That story was called The Hammerman by Toni Cade Bambara. I hope you liked it. We're going to get into our next story soon. But leave me some other comments. Tell me, for those of you all who have been with the show for a little while, if you can remember, it wasn't that long ago that we read it, Gorilla My Love. Tell me what you think about this character compared to Hazel. And one of the things that I noticed today, and I didn't notice it at the time, but when I was putting together the notes for this show, I realized that the woman, the grown woman in My Man Bovanne, was named Hazel. So I'm wondering if that is the same Hazel all grown up, or this is just a name that Toni likes to use because, as she said in sort of a preface, she likes to lie a lot. So, we can't really take any of it. for full truth. This next story has one of the most interesting titles that I've seen in a good little minute. This story got picked pretty much exclusively because I saw the title and was like, I can't not read this story. I don't know if this is going to be filth, flarn, filth, or what. I don't know what a ham rider is. I don't know how a Mississippi ham rider differs from any other kind of ham rider, but gold dang it, gosh darn it, I'm bound to find out. I know I'm drinking on camera. It's so tacky. It's so tacky, but that's what we're going to do anyway. So I'll be looking for some of y'all's comments about some of these other stories, and we'll come back to that toward the end of the show. But for now, let's get into Mississippi Ham Rider. I'll be here tomorrow for my early morning coffee fix. If you're going to meet me, sister, bring your own dime. He swiveled away from the counter and stomped out past the jukebox, huddling his greatcoat around him. I flipped my notebook open and wrote, Mississippi Ham Rider can be best described as a salty stud. We had talked for nearly an hour, or rather, I had talked. He had merely rolled his eyes and stared into his cup as he swirled the watery coffee, revealing the grounds. And still I had nothing to write up really, except that there was no humor about the man, and at 70 was not particularly interested in coming to New York to cut records for the new blues series. The waitress had wiped the counter menacingly and was leaning up against the pie display with her hands on her hips. I was trying to figure out whether I should follow Ryder, put Neil on his trail, or try to scrounge up a story from the townsfolk. The waitress was tapping her foot, and the cook, a surly-looking bastard in white cap, was peeping over the edge of the kitchen counter, his head kind of cocked to the side so that the sweat beaded around his nostril. I was trying to get myself together, untangle my legs from the stool, and get out of there. It was obvious that these particular sinister folks were not going to fill my dossier with anything printable. I moved. But before I even reached the door, I was in the third person absentular. So what's this high yalla northern bitch doing hitting on evil old Ham? There was only one rider in the 10-page directory, an Isabel rider, the address typed in the margin. I folded myself into Neil's Volkswagen and tried to find it. The town itself was something out of Alice or Poe. The colored section was altogether unbelievable. Outhouses, corner hardheads, and a predominance of junkyards with people in them. Poverty with all the usual trimmings. And Isabel Ryder ran one of those 3 immemorial stores, love potions and dream books and star charts and bleaching creams and depilatory powders and mason jars of ginger roots and cane shoots. A girl of about 16 was sitting on a milk box reading a comic book and eating a piece of sweet potato pie. Ms. Isabel Ryder around? I asked. No. She went right on reading and eating. I'm Inez Williams, I said. The people I work for are trying to persuade Mr. Ham Ryder to record some songs. They want him to come to New York and bring his guitar. He's a great blues singer, I said. She looked me over and closed the book. You want some pie? No, thanks, just Mrs. Ryder. Is she around? No, just me. I'm Melanie. My mother says Ham ain't going nowhere, nor me either. Lady before asked me to sit in somewhere. My mother says I ain't going nowhere, Ham neither. I leaned on the counter and unbuttoned my sweater. A badly drawn zodiac chart was right in front of me. I traced the orbits, looking for the Aries, the ram, to give me the high sign. He looked like a very sick dog in the last stages of sickle cell anemia. I tried to figure out the best way to run it down to this girl right quick, that they didn't have to live in this town or hang around in this store and eat sweet potato pie for lunch and act like throwbacks, before I totally distracted myself with the zodiac or consideration of abnormal hemoglobins and such like. Look, I said. Back in the 20s, a lot of record companies put out a series of race records, and a lot of blues singers and country singers and some flashy show business types made a lot of records. Some made a lot of money. But when the Depression came, the companies fell apart, and these singers went on home. Some stuck around and mopped floors and ran elevators. Now, this jive mother who is my boss thinks he can make some bread by recording some of the old timers, and they can make some bread too. So what I want is to get your granddaddy to come with us and sing a while, you see? You best speak to Ham himself, she said. I did, but he thought I was trying to get into his business. All I do is write up a thing about the singers, about their life, and the company sticks this on the album cover. She licked the last of the pie from her fingers and stood up. What you want to know? I whipped out my notebook. What does he like? Where does he come from? Who are his friends? Stuff like that. We three all what's left. His landlady, Mama Teddy, looks out for him when he gets to drinking and can't help himself. And I look out of his way when he gets raffish. She shrugged. Any chance of us all getting together? My partner, Mr. Neil McLaughlin, is the one who handles the business and all. I'd like for you all to meet him. This some fake hat? Yeah. Uh-huh. She ripped off the edge of the calendar and wrote an address. This here is where we eat. Mama Teddy's. You be there at 6. Neil was going into one of his famous crouches by the time I got to the park. He had spent the day trying to find quarters for us both, which was a lost cause. There was not even a diner where we could trade notes without incident. So I fell in beside him on the bench, jostling the bottle in his pocket. I'm beat and burnt out. I mean it, he wailed, rolling his eyes up to the heavens. This is the most unfriendly town. I escaped from an unbelievable little rooming house down the road just as this incredible act of hospitality was about to be committed. Yeah, well, look, pull yourself together and let's deal with the writer character first. He's quite a sketch. Jack boots, the original War One bespoke overcoat, razor scar, gravel voice, and personality to match. And you ready? He'll be damned if he's going up north. Says he was badly mistreated up there. Froze his behind off one winter in Chicago, and in New York, the Negro artists had to use a drafty freight elevator to get to the recording studio. Not like the swell conditions here. He wasn't an artist here. I think the best thing to do is just tape him here and let him sign whatever release one signs. But old man Lyon's dear heart wants him in the flesh to allow the poor folkway-starved sophisticates to, through an outrageous process of osmosis, which in no way suggests miscegenation, to absorb their native, all right, calm down. The thing is, his last offer was to sing obscene songs for party records. He damn near committed mayhem. In short, the man don't want to leave, buddy. But wasn't he at least knocked out by your superior charms, not to mention your long, lean gams? Those are my superior and singular charms. He was totally unimpressed. But the man's 70-something, keep in mind. Neil slouched over into his hands. This is hard work, I mean it. And I feel a mean, nasty spell coming on. I never had so much trouble and complication in my life before. I got consumption of the heart and, Neil, my nerves. They were always pretty easy to find. Mobile, Auburn, just sitting in a beat-up room in a beat-up hotel in a beat-up mood, just sitting there waiting for an angel of mercy, me, doing nothing but a moaning and a humming and a strumming. All right, cut it out. We're in trouble. The man don't want to budge, and all you can do is indulge in these theatrical and most unnerving, irritating fits of, dear heart, recall, he demanded, shoving his spread hand in my face. There was old man Supper, a real nice supper man, kind of quiet-like and easygoing, just dipping his snuff and boiling his supper, and then old Jug Henderson, an accident-prone saint of white lightning, fiddling away and sipping that bad stuff out of a mayonnaise jar, and Neil, my nerves. An old blind Grassy Wilson from Lynchburg, only one leg left by the time I arrived, but swinging still and real nice and talking into the machine to tell how his best gal slapped a razor across his chops. Enough. You're running amok. I got up and stretched my legs. We got to find a place called Mama Teddy's, and please, Neil, let me do the talking. I'm tired of eating sandwiches out of paper bags. Just be quiet till after we eat. And no wisecracks. We might get killed. Good Lord, he jumped up. I'm not insured. One false move and the man's liable to cut me, beat me up, starve me to death, and poison me. He grabbed himself by the throat and rolled around the top of the mailbox. A truck passed. I stepped aside and acted like I wasn't with the lunatic. Amazing how your race has deteriorated under segregation, Neil. If only you'd had an example to follow, you might have been a halfway decent dancer. He smoothed his hair back and walked quite businesslike to the car. Get in, woman. Mama Teddy's was a storefront thing. Fried chicken legs and barbecued ribs were painted on the window pane, and scrawled across the top of the glass in a funny little curly cues were the various price-fixed meals. In the doorway, there were 3 large jugs with soapy brown something or other in them, rag wicks stuffed into the necks and hanging over the sides to the floor. But you could see that the place was clean, sort of. I was starving. Neil was dragging along the tape recorder, mumbling statistics about hernia and prostate damage. You see that pickup over there? He whispered. It's full of angry blacks with ugly sticks who are going to whip my head because they think you're my woman. Never mind. Let's go find Mr. Ethnic Authentic. Neil tripped over jugs, and a whiff of chitlins damn near knocked me over. A greasy smell from the kitchen had jammed up my breathing before I even got into the place. Somebody's dying, whispered Neil. Soul food, I gasped, eyes watering. What? You wouldn't understand, my boy. The large, jovial woman who shuffled out of the kitchen with what only looked like great speed was obviously Mama Teddy. Hi, little honey, she said, squishing me into her bosom. Little Millie done told me all about you. Surely welcome. You too, she said, swallowing up Neil's hand in her fist. She hustled us over to the table with cloth and flowers. Mr. Ryder be in directly, lesson he's in his cups. And Miss Isabel's expected soon. Just rest yourself. We gonna have a fine southern dinner. Y'all folks from around here? She asked me. Mother's from Atlanta, and my father was born in Beaufort, South Carolina. She nodded, agreeing that those were certainly geographically fine folks. My people hail from Galway Bay, offered Neil. Well, I'm sure they're mighty fine people too, she winked. Now, is it for true, she whispered, setting the silverware, you talking taking Mr. Ham to New York to sing? We'd like to, but he doesn't seem very interested. Oh, she laughed, snapping the dishcloth across the table. All that huffing and puffing don't signify. You know what he and Melanie been doing all day, writing out the songs, the words. She's very smart, that girl. Make a fine secretary. I bet you could use a fine secretary with all that writing you do. There must be a lot of jobs. Neil saw it coming. He slouched in his seat and pushed his glasses up. He sat all the while rubbing his eyes. I fingered the soup spoon, vaguely attentive to Mama Teddy's monologue. It was perfectly clear what kind of game she was running, and why not? Along with the numerous tapes of chats and songfest, Neil had collected from the Delta and the Carolines a volume of tales that didn't go into the album catalogs, things he was saving for some sensational book that he'd never write. The payoffs, bribes, bargains, and deals, interviews in jail cells, drug wards, wino bins, things apart from the usual folksy, arctic atrocity story. The romance had long gone out of the job. Neil's first trauma occurred last spring when he finally smoked Bubba Mabley out of a corner. The 60-year-old card shark had insisted on taking his little woman along to New York. This slow-eyed youngster of 15 turned out to be his illegitimate daughter by his niece. It knocked Neil out, though he told it now with a certain rehearsed nonchalance. Mr. Ryder wouldn't think of traveling without his family, the big woman was saying. They're a very devoted family. Neil had worked his eyes into a feverish red, but I was perfectly content. One good exploitive act deserved another. And what was the solitary old blues singer going to do after he had run the coffeehouse circuit and scared the living shit out of the college kids? It was grotesque no matter how you cut it. I wished I was in films instead. Old Ham Ryder, besieged by well-dressed coffee drinkers wanting his opinion on Miles Davis and Malcolm X, was worth a few feet of film. And the quaint introduction some bearded fool in a tight across-the-groin pants would justify more footage. No amount of drunken thinking could convince me that Mr. Lyons could groom this character for popular hootenannies. On the other hand, if the militant civil liberty unions got a hold of him, Mr. Charlie was a dead man. Here's Miss Isabel, the woman announced. She looked real enough to upset Lyon's plans. She shook hands and sat down, crossed her legs, and lit up a cigarette. She was good looking, in a way. Plucked eyebrows, clinging wool dress, scary makeup. You knew she'd been jitterbugging since kindergarten, but she looked good anyhow. So you want the old man to sing, she said, sniffing in the curls of smoke. Sits in the window sometimes to sing, but that doesn't cut no greens, don't make no coins. She swerved around in her chair and kicked Neil's foot. The man needs money, mister. He's been needing for a long time. Now what you gonna do for him? We're gonna give him a chance to sing, Neil said, catapulting a cigarette butt across the room with a tablespoon. She looked dissatisfied. He needs, she said simply, sending up a smoke screen, the image of the great old artist fallen on bad times, holding up in a stuffy rooming house, drinking bad home brew out of a jelly jar and howling blues out in the window, appealed to my grade B movie-ruined mind. Now, when he gets here, Miss Isabel instructed me with her cigarette, you get him to do Evil Landlord. That's his best. Will he bring his guitar? Neil asked. He most ways do. To the dinner table, Neil persisted. To the dinner table, she said, one eyebrow already on its way to a threatening arch. And I need a cigarette. Mississippi Ham Rider brought his guitar and his granddaughter. He had on a white shirt and had left the greatcoat at home. He mumbled his greetings and straddled a chair, dislocating my leg in the process. You got a long pair of legs, sister. I had no clever retort, so we all just sat there while Mama Teddy heaved big bowls of things onto the table. There were collard greens and black-eyed peas and ham hocks and a long pan of cornbread, and there were a whole lot of things I'd never seen, even in my household. Bet you ain't ate like this in a long time, Ryder said. Most people don't know how to cook no-how, especially you northerners. Jesus Christ, said Neil, leaning over to look into the bowls on the far side of the table. What's that smells? That's the South, boy, said Ryder. Melanie smiled, and I suppose the old man had made a joke. Neil leaned back and got quiet. I don't sing no cotton songs, sister, he said, picking up a knife. And I ain't never worked in the fields or shucked no corn, and I don't sing no nappy-head church songs neither, and no sad numbers about losing my woman and losing my mind. I ain't never lost no woman, and that's the truth. He sliced the cornbread with a ceremonial air. Good, I said for no particular reason. He looked up, and for one rash moment I thought he was going to smile. I lost my head, but he really looked like he was going to work that bony old ashen skull in that direction. Well, what else is there? Neil finally asked. I mean, just what kind of songs do you sing? My kind. Melanie smiled again, and Miss Isabel laughed on her cigarette, but I was damned if I could get a hold of this new kind of humor. After we had eaten, Mama Teddy put coffee on the table and then tended to her customers. I stretched my legs into the aisle and relaxed, watching the old man work up his pipe full. He was impressive, the way a good demolition site can be, the way horror movies from the 30s are now. I was tempted to ask him how many people he had killed in his lifetime, thinking that I had at least gotten a hold of his vein of humor. But I sat and waited for him to sing. I was sure that on the first job he'd turn the place out and maybe do somebody in just for the fun that was in it. And then a really weird thing came over me. I wanted to ask him a lot of dumb things about the South, about what he thought of the sit-ins and all, but he had already taken on a legendary air and was simply not of these times. I cursed Mr. Lyon's fairy tale mentality and quietly indulged in fabricating figures from whole cloth. First, I'm going to sing you my birthday song, he said, pushing the coffee cups to the side. And then I'm going to do this number about the lady, a little lady with long legs. Then what? I smiled, putting my cup down. Then I'm going to get drunk directly and pack my things, my bad suspenders and my green hat, he said. 1 jar of Noxzema and my stocking cap. Melanie laughed straight out, and Neil began gagging on Miss Isabel's cigarette smoke. And I got a brand new jug of Gallo, he sighed. I don't never do no heavy traveling without my loving spoonful. Then you're coming with us? I asked. We all going to New York and tear it up, he said. Damn, coughed Neil. Ryder grabbed his guitar by the neck and swung it over the dishes. He gave Neil a terrible look that only aggravated the coughing. But first, I think Mr. Somebody best go catch himself some air. I can take it, Neil growled, hooking up the tape recorder. He climbed over customers to get to the outlet. It's on, man, he said. Go ahead and sing your song. He looked up at Neil, and then he did smile. I would never, ever want him to smile at me. I can take it, said Neil again, pushing up his glasses. See that you do, boy. See that you do. He plucked at the strings, grinning from ear to ear. And thus endeth the story. So that was Mississippi Ham Rider. Now, I'll be honest, somewhere around in the middle of that story, I'm sorry, I just chuckled because I saw one of the comments. Somewhere around the middle of that story, it started to feel familiar to me. So I don't know where I must have read this before. It is not in one of the past episodes. I know because we just got finished cataloging the episodes, but I'm somehow familiar with this story. And that was part of what kept getting me stumped up there a little bit. But yeah, interesting story. Interesting story. Let's get in with some of the comments here. Um, I don't know what the if you don't stop it and write is about, but that doesn't matter. Let's see. How do you wipe in a surly manner? I was that in the story? Who wiped in a surly manner? I don't know. We have to go back. Somebody remind me of that part because I legit don't remember reading that line. Erica says, I feel like Neil is constantly clutching his pearls and I'm here for it all. Come through, Mother Neil. You know what? I have nothing for that. Erica says she can smell the fried chicken, cornbread, and hot grease in that kitchen, Lordy, and now I'm hungry. It is a little late for all of that, madam. A tight across the we call it, you know what? We do. We do. I don't know what the deal was about those pants. They were certainly described. Ah, the waitress at the beginning was the one who was wiping Surly. You know what? You're right. Neil has no home training, none at all. Neil is a theatrical sort of fellow. I have never before or outside of the story heard the term "fey cat," but it was pretty obvious as soon as I read it what she was referring to. Now, in the previous story, there was a word that I omitted, which is not really the way we do things on this show. I typically read the works as read. However, since we were just coming back from the whole story having been broken up, and I was not quite in performance mode, I had the presence and the opportunity to go ahead and make that editorial call. So I did so. Under normal circumstances, we read everything pretty much as read, and that particular story did have one of the words that can be troublesome. Latricia wants to know how Faye was spelled in the story. It was spelled Feycat as two separate words. Is he one of those? Is he that Faye cat? Is how it was written. Um, I like this story, but it was very, very different. It was very different than some of the other Toni Cade Bambara works. I think I prefer, and I'm trying to think about it, I think the only other story that we have that we've read so far out of this book that features an adult protagonist is My Man Bovanne, because even Blues Ain't No Mockin Bird was told by a child, even though it was a very, very adult centered story and focused very much on the grown-ups. But the only other one I think we have is My Man Bovanne, and I do like that one a lot because I like the protagonist. I like the way that the mom is written in that story. But with this as an example of how she writes from the grown-up perspective, I like the way she writes out kids more so far. That's been the experience so far. Um, what is the time? Hang on a second. I've just realized that my clock is not set up where it used to be. I had to move everything around because I had to replace the glass top on the table that I do the show from. You guys don't know that because you can't see all that. But all of the equipment that was clamped to the table caused a crack in it some time ago. So I finally got to replace that. And I realized I did not put my clock back. Hang on just one second. Alexa, what time is it? To see any other time she all up in my business, but today she can't be bothered to tell me what the heck time it is, um which is super frustrating. But anyhow, somebody who's on Eastern time, give me a little note so that I can check what the time is, because I am actually using the camera that is on my main phone now, which is part of why the affects with the lighting have been a little bit different, and in my opinion, frankly, a little bit better lately, is because we've changed the camera rig setup. Thank you so much. Joker's letting me know that it is 10:57 p.m. So we are a little bit early for the close. Normally we like the show to go to about 11:15, but I don't see any harm. And Tricia said Alexa went to bed. You know what? I'm gonna be right behind her. Because I am weary. I am weary in my bones. I want to thank you all for coming out. Before I let you go, I do want to just make sure to remind you, please, 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 um, find a way, if you can, donate $1 or more, whatever you can, to the Storytime with Julian first annual spring book drive. You can use your mobile device and go on Cash App or Venmo, and you can find our partner Harriet's Bookshop. The addresses are right there in yellow on your screen right now. It's hashtag Harriet's Bookshop or at sign Harriet's Bookshop, depending on if you're using Cash App or Venmo. No matter which one you use, though, please make sure that you add the hashtag STWJ spring so that they know that your contribution is to go to the Storytime with Julian um, book drive. All right. So make sure that we do that. Another thing, too, for those of you all who want to know, again, the book that we read tonight was Gorilla My Love by Toni Cade Bambara. Typically, we like to make sure that we post up a link on where you can find that. So we'll get that link posted up soon. You'll see that in Facebook. You'll be able to click on it. But I also want to say, look, wherever you buy books, just continue to support Black authors and support Black bookstores locally as often as you can. But if you got to sometimes go to an online spot, I get it. But if you go to bookshop.org, you can find some of our partners like Harriet's. You can find Loyalty Bookstores. They're a Black-owned bookstore. You can now find Baldwin and Company over on Bookshop. There are lots of Black bookstores that have outlets online. So even if you don't have one that's near you or in your neck of the woods, you can still support Black bookstores that way. I also ask, listen, I don't like to do this because I kind of have a thing where I really don't like to go overboard on asking for your support, but I'm gonna be straight up with you. Last week, nobody did a tip the griot, and that's fine because I only did one show. I didn't do a show on Thursday. I did a show on Tuesday. And a lot of times, a lot of nights, nobody tips the griot, and I get it. That's fine. But I'm gonna ask you this: if you are here regularly, if you come back week after week, if this is something that you enjoy, I need you to understand that even a dollar, $2, whatever you can contribute helps to keep this show going on. It helps this show to grow. It helps me to buy more books. It helps me to be able to do things to incentivize and make the experience more pleasant and more pleasurable for you. So I'm asking, if you enjoy what we do at Storytime with Julian, please head over to Cash App. It's hashtag Storytime with Julian. And go ahead and, matter of fact, hold on. Let me make it easy for you to see because I've got it here. Boom, we'll just scroll it down at the bottom. Tip your griot at hashtag Storytime with Julian. Every little bit helps. Sincerely, it helps me to be able to grow this platform and do this more often. But in addition to that, it is very helpful for you when it's very helpful for us when you support the show by all other means as well. For one thing, I need reviews over on Facebook. If you love what we're doing, go to our page on Facebook and leave a review. Give us 5 stars and tell people what it is that you love about Storytime with Julian. Make posts from time to time. Let people know that it's Tuesday, it's Thursday, and this is what you're about to be up to. The more that you can help us grow, the more that you do to help us grow, the better the Storytime experience is going to be for everybody. Okay. Like that's really what this is about. Yes, I enjoy seeing the growth, but the more we're able to grow, the more I'm able to do, the more new books we'll be able to get, the more opportunities we'll be able to give for new authors who are writing to not just premiere their work, but maybe help publish their work. There are so many things that I'm excited about doing with this platform, and it's only ever going to happen with your help and your support. So please, if you can, support Storytime with Julian in all the ways that you can think of, because I promise you, every way that you can think of to support is going to be something that we appreciate and value. Now, if you're interested in getting your copy of Gorilla My Love by Toni Cade Bambara, you can find it at our good friends over at Harriet's Bookshop. And if you're on Facebook, you can click that link right there. All right, y'all. It has been a real pleasure reading and sharing with you all tonight. Thank you so much, Latricia. Thank you so much, Angel Monique. And thank everybody just for coming out once again. This has been Story Time with Julian. We are closing out episode 85, heading towards our anniversary on March 22nd. I can't wait. And we'll be at 100 episodes soon. Who knows what we might do at 100 episodes? Shit, 100 episodes when sitcoms start syndicating. So who knows? Anyway, y'all, thanks so much for coming out. I'm going to kick over to the credits. Make sure you watch those because those people are important. They do good things for this show. All right. Love y'all much. Peace.